The following program is brought to you by Fanbags Cornhole, Chicago's official supplier of professional cornhole boards and bags. Choose from any of their officially licensed designs or have my boy Brian design a custom set using anything from a selfie to your company's logo. Visit www.fanbagscornhole.com and use the promo code BRAGS to get 10% off your entire order. That's www.fanbagscornhole.com and use the promo code BRAGS for 10% off. Step up your game with Fanbags Cornhole.
Hey everybody, this is David Jenkins Jr., and you're listening to Boilers in the Stands.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? How are we doing today? I know how we're doing. We're not doing great, as my phone was playing some music there, so I apologize. Definitely a bit out of sorts, I think, as all of Boilermaker Nation is at this current moment. Let's, make no bones about it. Worst loss in program history. Probably the worst loss in college basketball history, as you just witnessed here today. I don't know if that's hyperbole or an overreaction. It just feels like the truth, and nothing that Purdue isn't used to, as I think a lot of you know. Losing to a 15 seed in the Sweet 16 last year was a first. Losing to North Texas the year before that, 13 seed, 3 straight years of losing to double-digit seeds. But this one probably stings the most. I think that goes without saying. And we're going to talk a lot about what happened in this game. I'm going to leave Joe and Aidan to break down the why, the X's and O's. There's going to be, I'm sure, a lot of discussion about Matt Painter's philosophies and things of that nature, because I've already seen it on Twitter. A lot of Boilers fans that have different opinions on Matt Painter. I'm one of those people that believes in Matt Painter as a coach. But on a day like today, it's going to get questioned, and I think he, more than anyone, understands that it's not easy. The last time a 16 seed lost or beat a number 1 seed was Virginia, and they went on to, as all Purdue fans know, win the national championship the next year, and beat Purdue on the way there to the Final Four. And I don't think any Purdue fans want to hear about that right now, but a little bit of perspective when it comes to calling for Matt Painter's job. At the end of the day, the players did not do what they needed to do. They were gun shy the entire game. I said it in the first half to my wife. This was St. Peter's all over again. They were scared of their own shadow. And I get it. There's a lot of pressure. And at the end of the day, they're young kids, but they're still adults. They're kids by definition, but they are adults, and they can handle this. They're going to get through life. Most of these guys will be back next year and playing at Mackey and dominating like they do in the regular season. But this dragon in March is a serious one that they've yet to slay. And Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer as freshmen, they're going to have to wear this one and try to overcome it in their Purdue careers. Is this Zach Edey's last game ever as a Boilermaker? I think us out here on the panel think it is. But after a loss like this, I don't know. Does he want to end his career on that note? I don't know. I understand he's got greener pastures ahead as far as making money is concerned, and ultimately he has to do what's best for him and his family. But maybe he does. Maybe this is something that encourages him to come back and finish it on the right note. I don't know. And these are all things we're going to discuss tonight. I want you guys, as a Boilermaker fans, to use this as a venting. Let's try to keep it somewhat respectful here in the chat. I'm not expecting this to be a church, but at the same time, let's be respectful to one another. I feel for every single Boilermaker fan. I feel for Kraig. He's at the game right now. I didn't want to go today. I wanted to wait till Sunday, and that no longer is happening. And I feel bad for Joe and Aidan. These are their last years as students. I feel bad for everybody that has cheered for this team and wears their heart and soul for this team, for this to happen, because I know how much we are the butt end of a lot of jokes for a lot of teams in the Big Ten. I'm getting more messages from people I haven't heard from in a long time, twisting the knife. I certainly am somebody that likes to talk crap, but I'm not somebody that does that in the heat of the moment when another team's bullets are flying, but to each his own. If Illinois fans want to have their fun, they haven't been to a Sweet 16 since 2005. Indiana fans want to have their fun. Purdue's been the better program for the last 10 years. So, at the end of the day, the Big Ten overall hasn't been very good here in March. We haven't, as a conference, won a championship since 2000, and Purdue is a part of that. And as Matt Painter said in the press conference before the game yesterday, they got to worry about themselves, when it comes to the lack of Big Ten success in March, and they need to be the ones to fix that. And there's going to be a lot of soul searching going on, and I just wonder how Matt Painter is going to look at this. I know he's very pragmatic, but at the same time, and Kraig was talking about it in the chat, and I'm sure he'll eventually get his thoughts, whether he can pop in here today or, for our end of season wrap-up show, which may come another couple weeks from now after we can, let this mull over. But I just wanted to kind of start this off, kind of giving a message to all the Boiler fans. I feel for you. I understand how hard this is, and I understand you probably got a lot of relatives and friends and people on Twitter. They're going to give it to you for forever for this one until Purdue can ultimately win a national championship. But I also would like you to keep in mind it's harder on these players and these coaches. It's much harder. They're going to have to live with this for the rest of their life. And it's not an easy thing to live with. And they've put their blood, sweat, and tears for this program out there. They accomplished a lot, for a team that was unranked, fastest to number one in the country for a long time, and they deserved it. And they won a Big Ten regular season championship and a Big Ten tournament championship in a year where they weren't expected to do much. And I understand not one Purdue fan wants to hear about the consolation prizes right now, but at the end of the day, you do have to carry some perspective. It's over. The season is done. So you can either curse at every player on this team for choking. You can curse Matt Painter for not doing his job by getting to a Final Four and winning the national championship and adding that to his resume, or you can take a step back and have some perspective for this team. I'm always going to be the one once the bullets stop flying, I'm going to put my cards down and try to carry that perspective. It hurts. I'm hurting with all of you, but next year will come and we'll see if this team can eventually do it in March. They've never been good with these kind of teams. When the teams are, they're playing teams with nothing to lose, they seem to play tight. And I feel like they're better off when they're playing teams like Villanova and Tennessee and Duke and things of that nature. And they got to figure that out. They cannot come out tight. They cannot come out gun shy. They were broke down constantly going, on defense. They were letting everyone get by them, and offensively not pushing the tempo. They're pressing, and then when they wouldn't press, Purdue would just walk it up the court. To me, those were the reasons why they lost today. So that's it. We got to wear it as Boiler fans. I want to bring in my guys, Joe Jackson and Aidan Kunst. I know they're hurting right now just as much as I am, and everybody in the chat is. So we're just going to wear it. Joe Jackson, appreciate all your hard work this year, breaking stuff down. What's your instant reaction to this debacle of a game?
I was trying to figure out what I was going to say, right? I knew as you were, and I think you worded stuff pretty well. I was like, eventually it's going to come to me, and I'm going to have to say some words, aren't I? And I just don't really have any. It sucks. It just sucks. There's going to be a lot of talk about Painter. There's going to be a lot of talk about the system and that. Maybe some of it's fair. I don't know. That'll be something I'll want to. The way I think in that. And I like to, work through things as much as possible. That's not a right now thing for me. Off first glance, you go 5 of 26 with guys that are supposed to be shooters from 3. You go 8 of 26. What is that? That's 30% or something. You go 8 of 26, you win this game. And there's a lot of little things that you can look at, but it just sucks. That's really all I got. I wish it could have ended even if it wasn't a championship, just different, because now the success that this team had and how good this team was is never going to be remembered really. And they lost to 16 seeds, so that's fair. Like you said, one of the worst losses ever. Just wish that in 5 years when we look back at the season, we would be able to be like, oh yeah, that was the team that was picked to be 5th or whatever, won the Big Ten outright, won the Big Ten title, made a run in March, and maybe they didn't win, but they made a run. That's really all I got there. So
Yeah, it's understandable, man. It's hard to come up with words. I've been doing this a long time, and I've covering different teams, and I've been through a lot of disappointing losses. So I'm a little more used to being ready for these kind of moments. And halfway through the first half, I was preparing myself for this moment. It's not easy going live, but that's what we do here. We're not going to hide, we're going to come up here for this post-game show, give you guys an outlet to vent, listen to some things. And a lot of you probably won't come back to this for a week, but maybe you will later because you just want to, get it out of your system. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to purge this out of our system. Aidan, your instant reaction to the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely brutal. As Joe said, I don't have a lot of great words either. Certainly don't want to, go at the players or anything like that. I don't feel that that's the right way to go about this. But it speaks to, we thought we had kind of cracked the code with the most dominant interior post presence since Shaq, and surrounded by a bevy of amazing shooters. I mean, that was what we thought we had with this group in Portland and earlier on in the season, and it seemed like there was almost no way to guard us, and so to be held under 60 points by a 16 seed a few months later it's pretty shocking, man. It's really hard to comprehend how this all went downhill so fast. But maybe it speaks to the fact that it's really hard to recruit shooters and get guys who, are definitely going to knock down shots. Maybe you have to develop those shooters, and certainly we got a lot of guys that'll get developed. But yeah, I mean, we'll dive into maybe some of the reasons why, but off the cuff, it's just pretty tough to swallow.
Yeah, it definitely is, man. And we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this, guys, as best we can. I want you guys to break it down from an X's and O's perspective. Joe, eventually, I don't know if you can hear me, but we should get the stats in if you haven't already, and we'll break down some of the stats of the game to try to get us into our rhythm here, because I think we're all kind of thrown off a little bit. And if you guys wouldn't mind, and I'll do my best to check the chat, but we'll try to pull up as many comments or questions as we can from all of you, so we can hear from you guys, because I understand that everybody's feeling it right now. So, this is just kind of where we're at. It's devastating. There's no getting around it. Mark Harmon's texting me, so that's the first word that came out of my mouth. Matt Painter is not going to get fired, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. I understand he's not perfect. I do think he's one of the best coaches in the country. He's not proving it in March in these NCAA tournaments. There's a bit of luck that comes down to some of this stuff, but at the end of the day, he didn't have his team ready to play today. And it's really no excuse when you have the head coach of Fairleigh Dickinson calling you out 2 days ago. Like, if they would have got surprised, it was a quiet walk into this game and they got surprised and blitzkrieged in the first half, maybe you can understand that. But this team was talking smack coming in this game. And you guys still came out there and looked timid. Zach Edey looked timid on the first few possessions, airballing hook shots that he normally is automatic with. Every single player on the team was hesitant to shoot the ball. Fletcher Lawyer eventually got going. The irony of that being that Fletcher has been the most inconsistent shooter for the last 4 or 5 weeks.
Game.
And everybody else went and just didn't want to pull the trigger. Caleb First multiple times passing up open shots. Everybody was passing up shots. Mason Gillis, because you guys are going to say it better than me in the way they were bracketing Zach Edey. And they weren't just bracketing him when they were trying to feed it into the post, so to speak, with your Feed the Post podcast. But, the pick and roll that Zach Edey and the Purdue likes to run, where they take Zach Edey to the top of the key, and then Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith come around the curl, they stayed back. They did not chase around the curl. They just constantly stayed back and dared Purdue to shoot it. And they just weren't either A, making the shots, or B, attempting the shot. And so many times, one time, Brandon Newman's one of the best three-point shooters on the team when he wants to be. But there were so many times, like in the one time he missed in the second half, it just highlighted they were thinking about it too much. They kick it to him, he's wide open, and he's setting up like he's shooting a free throw to shoot it. They're so nervous. They're trying to be perfect in their delivery instead of grip it and rip it and let it fly, play loose, and so deliberate getting into their sets, crossing half court with 20 seconds left on the shot clock, standing at the top of the key, trying to get into your sets to eventually, because you're passing up shots, you're just trying to throw it into Zach Edey, but there's like 5 seconds left on the shot clock. And before you know it, there's a turnover because now you're rushing to get a shot up, and it's a bad shot even if you were able to get it up. Turnover, go the other way. And then, like I said, defensively, they couldn't keep anyone in front of them. This team was constantly cutting, switching, going. It was a unique matchup. They're the smallest team in Division I. You'd think on paper Purdue's going to dominate them. But just like St. Peter's, and Matt Painter gave them credit all season long this year when he was asked about them, they were willing to get in the fight. It's not about your height. It's about the fight. And Purdue did not want to get into the fight at times, and it was highlighted on the final rebound that ended up being Purdue's ball, but Zach Edey blocks the shot, and everyone's standing there looking. And I get it. Like I said, I understand it. It's pressure. They're nervous. They don't expect to be in this position, and now all of a sudden they're there, and they blow it. That's all it is. It's sports. I'm not going to bag these guys. I'm not going to take personal shots at them, but that's what sports is. I've been in those moments where I've came through in the clutch and playing city basketball. I never played high school sports or anything like that, but I understand what it's like to feel confident playing and to be nervous and choke. Both have happened to me in my life. I've never had to do it in front of the entire country watching you and making fun of you. So for every fan out there that's got harsh words for these guys on Twitter, you guys have no idea what it's like to be like this and to be on this kind of a stage. Show some respect to these guys. They're your guys. And by the way, as far as a fan in the stands, I've said it. So this isn't revisionist history for just today. I've said it multiple times. If we want to just talk, you want to talk about the players, we can talk about the players all day today, and we will. We'll talk about the stats. We'll talk about the X's and O's. Joe will break it down on the chalkboard. But time and again, and I've been going to these tournament games for 5 or 6 years now, time and again, and at the Big Ten tournament, it was the same thing. Purdue's fans, you want to talk, okay, everybody sitting at home doesn't have a gripe to say, but if you were at the stadium today, you needed to be loud the entire time. I understand you're just as nervous as the players, but only one time throughout the game did you guys make your voice heard through the TV. So you want to have criticism towards the players. This is a fan in the stands show. I got my criticism towards the fans in the stands. You guys got to be louder. Braden Painter is the only one that can ever get anyone to get fired up during the game. You guys have been living and breathing this team all year. You pay lots of money to go to the game. Get loud. I don't care if the other team's playing better. It's part of the intimidation of the psyche of a team. So if you start getting loud, that affects the other team's play. It does. I don't care what anybody says. I know for a fact it does. It changes momentum. At the end of the day, the players are the ones that blew it. But I get frustrated every time they said it on the telecast. Well, normally the entire stadium would be against the number 1 seed right now, but it's a predominantly Purdue crowd. I didn't hear them. They were totally nervous, and I understand why. But hey, you're there. You paid the money. Get up, get loud, encourage the team instead of sitting on your hands or having your hands in your face because you feel sorry for yourself. Get up for these guys. I mean, it's too late now, but I just encourage that Mackey Arena mentality, that crazed fanness needs to transfer over in these tournament games. I can't emphasize that enough. And I've said it before. I said it during the Big Ten tournament, and I've said it during the season. So don't come at me about that I'm just bringing this up now. I said it last year, and I'm saying it again this year. But we can get to the X's and O's. I don't know if you got the stats. You got something, Aidan?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think from the jump, my kind of alarm bells were on, because it started to feel like last year in that they were getting every 50-50 ball. It felt like they were playing harder than Purdue. And I couldn't believe that after what the FDU coach said and all, like you said, Braggs, they were talking, Purdue acknowledged it. Jenkins said it. Like, I couldn't believe that they were beating Purdue to the glass. They were beating Purdue to the ball. You know, they put Edey on their 4th best guy, and their 4th best guy has 19.
He's making hockey substitutions where he's bringing entire different lineups in, like at the first whistle.
It was a disaster. I couldn't tell whether I wanted to have Braden Smith on the floor or not, because it felt like one of those games where you needed him to be out there to push the pace, to beat the trap down the floor. But then the turnovers, and I don't know if I was in denial all year. I just didn't think the freshman guards thing would come back to bite us as early as it is. I get the Painter complaints that we're seeing a lot of in the chat. I understand that. And he has to take responsibility. Absolutely. And the execution down the stretch was not good enough. I mean, just not good enough. You have a baseline out of bounds play, and you end up with that shot by Fletch. You have 30 seconds to get a shot off, and it takes you till the 12-second mark to get off a shot that you get blocked into the crowd. You know, I think the execution wasn't good enough down the stretch. I just kind of at a loss for words. I think it was a stunning performance. I mean, just stunning. And it's one of the biggest upsets ever. This team didn't even win their conference tournament.
Win their conference. Because the team that did win the conference had just transferred over from Division II to Division I. That's why it is the worst loss. 61
in defense.
It is the worst loss, and they're the smallest team in Division I. It is, without question, the worst loss in college basketball history. Purdue now owns that. And you're going to hear it from IU fans and everybody else. Yeah. And I get it. You know, my good friend Tom Ponziano's in the chat. And he's going to come at me. I know a lot of people are going to come at me about this because they're fired up about today. I didn't see half of you in here when I was calling it out at the Big Ten tournament when we were winning. So I don't want anybody in here that thinks that I'm just bringing this up right now because of some kind of like temper tantrum. I'm not. I've been saying this for 2 years now. So all I'm saying is I'm not blaming the fans because Purdue lost. What I'm saying is if we're going to criticize the fans for the ones that were there, and I'm not going to get off topic on this. This is the last we're going to talk about it. All I'm saying is if we're going to criticize the players, the fans can also hold some accountability of their end of the bargain. If you don't think you make an impact as a fan in the stands, stop talking about how loud Mackey Arena is. That's what I'm saying. It does make an impact. And I've seen it firsthand. Half of you in the comments don't go to the freaking games. Don't go to the tournament games and don't see it for what I've seen. So I can have this opinion. I also understand it's completely on the players. And so, Ryan Kurtz says, dude, not the fans' fault we missed open threes. Not fans' fault Gillis gets taken out when we're making a run. Okay, you're right. It's not the fans' fault that they missed shots and they didn't play well. But keep that same energy for Matt Painter because Matt Painter can't get these guys to play confident and shoot. Matt Painter cannot – there's adjustments that he can make, but at the end of the day, they just needed to make shots and play with confidence and get to loose balls and get in the fight. He can't force them to do that, and you can't act like he's not telling them in the timeout huddle or the halftime locker room that they got to wake up. I guarantee that was his message. So at the end of the day, it's on the players. We all understand that. But this is a fan in the stands show. That's who I have always been, and that's how I'm going to wear it. I'm always going to look at it from a fan in the stands perspective. Aidan coaches. Joe is an analytical guy, understands. These guys understand the X's and O's. I'm the meatball here, and I'm going to stay in my lane for what I'm talking about here. And for me, I'm going to look at the fans in the stands. And like I said, nobody had a word about it when I encouraged this at the Big Ten tournament. And that's the last we're going to talk about it. Now we're going to talk about the stats of the game. We're going to talk about the X's and O's. Just a point. Yes, we got off on a tangent there, but it's a point that I've been making well before this show. So some of you that are new here may not like that I just said that. I really don't give a shit, to be honest with you. I'm going to say it because it's the truth. Braden Painter is the only one that keeps a positive energy at every freaking game. So anybody that goes to the games, keep that Braden Painter energy or don't go. That's what I'm saying. And I don't care what you think about it. If you don't like it, go watch some other podcast. So we're going to get to the stats of the game. Fairleigh Dickinson shoots 39% of the field on 34 of 62 shooting. The Purdue Boilermakers shoot 36% from the field on 19 of 53 shooting. Fairleigh Dickinson shoots 30% from the three-point line on 7 of 23 from the three-point stripe. Purdue, 5 of 26 from the three-point line, shooting 19% from three. Abysmal. Fairleigh Dickinson, 8 of 10 from the free throw line. Purdue actually shot pretty well from the free throw line. They missed some ones at the end that certainly hurt, but 15 and 19 from the free throw line. 16 turnovers. Right there, three-pointers and turnovers, the story of this game. 16 turnovers for Purdue, only 9 for Fairleigh Dickinson. Points off of those turnovers, 15 for FDU, and only 5 points off of those turnovers for Purdue. 33 total rebounds for FDU, 42 for Purdue. Defensive rebounds, 27, 15 offensive for Purdue, 22 defensive rebounds, 11 for FDU. Second chance points, FDU with 11, only 7 for Purdue. They could not get on the offensive glass as much as you're used to seeing, especially when you consider how many misses they had in this game, especially off the three-point shots. They just could not get the ball back on the majority of those misses. Bench points, 16 for FDU, only 5 for Purdue. Unfortunately, the bench just did not come to play today for Purdue. 26 points in the paint. 24 for FDU, basically washed out with points in the paint. And you're talking about the smallest team in Division I going up against a guy like Zach Edey. But we've seen a handful of games this year where we talked about on post games where Purdue was outscored on points in the paint. So, this is something we've seen a few times. I know it may be a surprise to some that are watching Purdue for the first time, but today we've seen this before is what I'm trying to say. 7 fast break points to 6 for Purdue, 6 blocks for Purdue, 3 for FDU, 11 steals for FDU, 3 for Purdue. 11 assists for FDU, 15 for Purdue. And lead changes, 14 lead changes in the game. FDU led this game for 25 minutes and 42 seconds. Purdue only 11 minutes and 36 seconds. That's probably one of the biggest shockers. We just have not seen that much this year, where Purdue is beaten that badly in time of possession with the lead. So those are the stats of the game. Joe, you're the stats guy. You're the numbers guy here on the show. I know what stats stand out to you, so we'll just let you rep, because I'm sure I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, it's shooting. It's like, I feel like I'm probably oversimplifying it a bit. We know that this was not a good shooting team this year. They had a stretch, but they took 26 threes. Lawyers at the end was obviously crazy contested. Aside from that, like, 5 were maybe contested, and it might be more. I could totally be remembering. At least felt that way. 5 of 26, you get open looks. Like, these are guys recruited because they can shoot. And I still believe that all of them can, and maybe that's just me being naive or something, but like, Jenkins is 0 for 2, Gillis 1 for 7, and he had so many good looks. Braden 1 for 6 and he had a strong start. I thought that, I thought it was gonna be a big game for him. Yeah, 5 of 26 from 3. It's not like Fairleigh Dickinson shot crazy well. They got a bunch of bounces, but Purdue let them. And then the other one's turnover, 16-9. It just, you can't afford that if you're Purdue. Any team ever. You do that, you turn the ball over 7 more times and you shoot 5 of 26 from 3. It's going to be tough to win. Those are probably the two that stick out. And then, I'll stick with those. I think points in the paint kind of stands out a bit too.
Yeah, absolutely. Aidan, for you, what stands out to you?
I think this is just kind of a silly stat, but just the fact that Fairleigh Dickinson led for 25-42. I mean, this whole game was at their tempo. They were the better team the whole game. And I can't believe I'm saying that, but this was not one of those fluky upset wins that a team just steal, like the Furman game. If you watch that Furman game, it felt like Virginia was the better team the whole way. This one had no such feel. I mean, this one felt like
St. Peter's.
Yeah, it felt like St. Peter's. It really felt a lot like St. Peter's. They beat us in different ways. I think in this game, I think FDU's guards were just straight up better than Purdue's guards. They couldn't keep them out of the lane. I mean, early in the game, Brandon Newman was trying to guard a guy out to half court, got blown by, and just blown by off the dribble. I mean, the whole game they had that weave action. Pretty simple stuff, but it is hard to guard, especially when you have better athletes. And FDU kept it simple. They dribble handoff, drive the paint. And then when it got going down late, they said, all right, we're going to take Edey's guy and put him in action, pick and pop 3. Guy steps up and hits the shot, but it
And how about, you had one guy that shot 27% from 3 all year, hit 2 threes. Yeah. You had another guy that averages like 6 points a game on the year. He hits a step back 2 at one point. That was the other part of it, was all the little breaks were falling their way. It was a perfect storm. It was exactly like St. Peter's in a lot of ways. I think this year this team had a little more composure, because last year's team, if you were there, they were melting down in the first half emotionally. And I felt like Purdue, until the very, very end, where they gave up, Fletcher basically just jacked up an ill-advised 3 to try to tie it when he was tucked in the corner. I thought they were staying in the fight. They look gassed. I'm seeing more than a few people talk about that, in the chat. I agree. Zach Edey was completely gassed. It's tough, man. There's just so much that we can talk about, and I'm sure we're going to go in circles a little bit, because it's just bizarre, like, to see this team do this back-to-back years against very similar teams, 15 and 16 seeds, no less, but teams that just they don't have, there's just the embodiment of the underdog. This is the embodiment of David versus Goliath, and it happens, lightning striking twice on Purdue. It's brutal. It's soul crushing. So I like I said, I feel for every single fan. And I know we went on a little tangent there, but it's just been my opinion as far as getting loud at tournaments. But beyond that, I feel for every single fan. Every single one of you deserve a better March run. You guys deserve, everyone listening deserves that special March run. And I do believe it eventually will be that it will happen, but it's not easy on a day like today to think about those sunnier days, but I do think it will happen for this team. They've raised the level of expectation to the point where all these fans in the chat, rival fans against Purdue, they have this feeling of expectation that Purdue should get to the Final Four. That's a new revelation for the Purdue program. I don't remember a time when I was growing up that we all just assumed like that Purdue is getting to the Final Four or their season's a failure. They've now reached that point. Doesn't make it any easier when you blow games like this to these teams, but there's no question that they've raised their level of expectation from a team that's just happy to be in the Sweet 16, which they've gotten to fairly often here lately, to a team that it's just not good enough. Illinois hasn't been to a Sweet 16 since 2005, and I promise you they're not going to fire Brad Underwood this offseason.
Well, yeah, they're not going to fire Painter. But he does have to take accountability. I mean, this is legitimately one of the worst. This is one of the biggest upsets in sports history. This team didn't make their tournament. I was going to ask you, Joe, like, this did not feel like the offense we've seen all year. No. And it felt like the spacing was poor. There were times where you would see Morton backing a guy down. Smith was in the post, like stuff we just haven't seen all year. From guys. The spacing was unbelievably bad. And I think to some extent they got in the mode of just try to find Zach, and FDU did an awesome job fronting and mucking it up a little bit. I'd like to go back and watch to figure that out. A Painter felt like he had to have Smith on the floor, which I think is the right call, but maybe Jenkins would have been better. I think Lawyer, maybe there were times, but I think offensively was what was just the most shocking to me. How little spacing, how little. You go back and watch those games in Portland, this team was driving and kicking everything. Tonight, they felt like they were content jacking up the first shot they got, but maybe a shot fake drive, get a paint touch, and then we're playing. Maybe then you give Edey the chance to seal off his man, and you go in and get a free layup like Brandon Newman got early in the game. Like there seemed to be just a trigger happiness, if that's a word, to this team tonight. And then down the stretch, they tightened up, and like Gillis puts up that air ball, and now he won't shoot it the next time he gets it. And he catches the ball, and he pump, and then he shoots it. It's like, now you're out of rhythm. So the offense just baffled me. Holding them to whatever, 63, like that's fine. Like they're an okay offensive team. But this should have been like 95 to 63. It's just no excuse. It's pretty shocking, man.
Yeah, no, it just wasn't what Purdue's been all year. And I think a little bit of his game plan, FDU they basically zoned up. They basically like usually your box and one is on a guard, like just chase him around. They almost just they didn't actually box and one. I'm not saying that. I realized that, but it felt similar to that where it's just like, we're going to put four guys and then have somebody still, they fronted Edey and then they had at least 1 to 2 guys showing help on the backside. I'm surprised they didn't try to get him more touches in the middle, like that horns high low that I've drawn up a couple times. I feel like they probably I know they went to it once or twice for sure.
They got a dunk. Yeah.
In the first half, towards the end of the first half, and then they just went away from it.
Went to those side post ups that just are easier to help on. We saw it, that we've seen it all year. They're much easier to help on, and late game, it's hard, man. It just there was no level of shot making down the stretch,
Yeah, and it's just so tough. Like, and I know there's been a ton of comments about who should have played and who wasn't. Like, there was 2.5 guys I trusted out there at the end of the game. It was Edey, Lawyer, and I trusted Gillis's energy. I think he was brought in first when he came in for Gillis. He looked so out of place. TKR, I'm not going to blame TKR. Can't really do much just because like
hurt us.
You're not
defensively,
taking Zach Edey out of the game.
No, and TKR, there was a drop off defensively when TKR came in, and that's why he didn't come back in.
Yeah, Jenkins is maybe the one you get more minutes, but like you're not taking Lawyer out. You're obviously not taking Edey out. You can't really afford to take Gillis out unless you went Morton at the 4. Morton at least had some confidence, but it wasn't I wasn't like trusting him. Like I don't think that was part of the issue too. Is just like you needed 5 guys, even if they weren't all making plays, like 5 guys you could trust to run actions. And I don't think Purdue had that today. I really don't. And maybe, Painter maybe needs to just, get ways to get those guys in good spots where you trust them more. But I don't know, like, did you guys think that's the same thing? Like, I just truly didn't trust anybody in.
No, I mean, it was sad. You thought David Jenkins Jr., and I love him. I honestly want to invite him on for our wrap-up show, and I think there's a chance he might, because he's a guy that has high integrity and he's not afraid of stepping up to the mic. I know that. We'll see. And we're gonna do our wrap-up show probably a month from now. But I love David Jenkins Jr. and everything he brought to this team, but he didn't have the game that we needed him to have today. He was one of the guys that we really needed to help weather the storm for these freshman guards. Fletcher Lawyer eventually, at some point did wake up, halfway through the first half. And like you said, became a guy that you could trust out there, but they just didn't have anything when it came to that. It was, every single player on the team across the board at some point passed up shots, and they just needed to figure out how to attack the rim better. And it was frustrating, especially with under 10 minutes to go, where Purdue would get a rebound and then Braden Smith is walking it up the court so slowly. At one point, he walked it up, crossed half court with 22 seconds, then stood at the half court line for another 10 seconds while they tried to get into their set. And it ultimately led to a Zach Edey turnover. Attack the basket, try to speed this game up, get them to make some mistakes. And the problem was, and the reason they weren't was because in the first half, the few times they sped up, they turned the ball over. So they just couldn't do anything right. I mean, there was nothing. The one time I felt like, okay, this is a wrinkle they could start getting into was when they did the high-low with Caleb first. They put him at the top of the key and fed it into Edey. Easy bucket for Edey. I believe that was in the first half. The second time was in the second half where Zach Edey gets the ball. They double. Mason Gillis cuts to the rim. Zach drops it off to Gillis for the and one. Those are the kind of things that you've got to shake up in your system to get to the rim and not just depend on the three-pointer, which is clearly not working. And Zach Edey can't get his post-up game going. The only points he could get was off of rebounds for the majority of his play. So, they just didn't have it, and it was a unique matchup, and I know no Purdue fans are going to want to hear it, but that's what it was. And, I know Kraig would say this too, and if he was here, the athleticism of their guards was hurting Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer to get to the rim. Fletcher made threes, but he wasn't like getting to the rim or anything. No baskets were coming easy. So maybe, Catchings and Miles Colvin and guys like that are coming into this program might help with that. But, there was literally, I can't think of one thing that was going right for this team today. They were honestly lucky to not get blown out as bad as they were playing.
They were very lucky. There were stretches where after you didn't hit a shot. I mean, then the second half there, when it was 54-53 forever, like, boy, I just
in the first and second half, they had 6-minute stretches where they didn't score.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, it was shocking to me to be watching a 1 seed versus a 16 and not feeling like the 1 seed had an athletic edge. Like that was shocking. And maybe that goes into why I think it's part of why we love this team all year is the lack of recruiting rankings or athleticism or whatever, and how they were winning in spite of that. But it's just a stylistic change. No team played this way that we saw in the Big Ten all year, but at the end of the day, you've recruited a team that all of them, they said it all year, is like, oh yeah, all of us have either shot 40% at the college or high school level from three outside of Edey. Like that was the thing all year. And you got basically warm-up shots tonight. I mean, basically a variety of practice shots from three tonight, whether it at all points of the game, whether it was Newman late, catching that one on the left wing and basically having all day. And so I do think I am all for being process-based, and I think it's a good thing in general. But I do think at a certain point, maybe you have to attack a closeout or two.
Yeah.
Because they just weren't going down. And so now you have to try something else. If they're not going to go down, then instead of kind of being in denial and just saying, well, we'll just keep shooting them. Eventually they'll fall. Like the reality is this team hasn't been a great three-point shooting team all year. And so maybe there was a time, I think, where Smith could have shot fake, gotten to his floater, where Lawyer could have done the same thing, where Morton could have gotten a paint touch, and now something else is open, whether it's Edey or whatever. Newman, the same thing. Like, obviously those guys aren't great off the dribble, but it was so wide open that you've got space to go take a different shot, and this isn't like this team is, it shouldn't be the case where a 16 seed was playing harder than you and was more athletic than you. And that just can't happen. That just can't happen. It's inexcusable. And Painter has to take the blame, and Tobin Anderson outcoached him. That's the reality of it. I love Matt Painter as much as anybody. Tobin Anderson came in here. He called his shot before the game, and he came in with an awesome game plan. And yes, they got a few bounces. They had the anatomy of an upset, whatever, but it's shocking and inexcusable. I don't know what to say, man.
Yeah, and I think Painter will be the first one to admit that.
No question.
Now the question is, for a lot of Purdue fans out there, is it fair to say you want him gone? I mean, 3 straight years of 13, 15, and 16 seeds beating you. He's got more than that on his resume for bad losses. I don't want him gone, but let's just placate to every fan that's watching and every fan in the chat that's screaming fire Painter, which we've seen time and again when the season inevitably ends like this. Do you bring him back, or do you fire him and offer the coaching job to Micah Shrewsbury? I know Micah Shrewsbury in this scenario would never take that job in a million years over his friend Matt Painter, but just to placate to every fan that is calling for this, what would you say to that?
I think if you want Painter fired, I think it should be more or less like attach 3 names that are realistic. If you can attach 3 names that are realistic, like a realistic hire, I'm not just saying go get some random guy. Like, I don't think Shrews is realistic. If you want that, like 3 realistic hires that would come to Purdue, and then if that's the case, then maybe we can talk. If you don't have that, I just don't. For me, and personally, it's just not a conversation I want to have. Like, he's still one of the better coaches, and he's had poor games in March, and there's no denying that, and he's got to take accountability. Like,
what about Aidan? Should we hire Aidan?
No, you don't want that. You don't.
We'll have Braggs as the hype guy on the staff.
Aidan, will you get into a defensive stance on the sideline as a coach? Does that sound big on that?
I don't know. I hope I'm a little easier to understand than the FDU coach. But I don't think you can't fire Painter. He's
the only way Micah Shrewsbury would be a realistic option is if Matt Painter retired.
Yeah.
Micah Shrewsbury would never take this job for Matt Painter after getting fired. In a million years, that's how close they are. Yeah. He would never take that job. Kelvin Sampson, somebody just said in the chat, Kelvin Sampson is not taking the Purdue job. He's just fine in Houston. He's going to get his recruits in Houston. For everyone that wants to get rid of Matt Painter, you are not finding a better coach for this program. He has more recruits coming to Purdue. The recruiting system continues to roll over itself. They're successful in every aspect of their program with the exception of March Madness. And I understand that's a tough pill to swallow. but every team in the Big Ten is having trouble with success in March Madness. Every single team. So you're trying to look for the grass that's greener on the other side, and it's not there. You cannot find one realistic coach that's better than Matt Painter, let alone three, to come to West Lafayette and do a better job than Matt Painter, to a coaching standpoint, whether you understand he has deficiencies or not, and B, more importantly, to a recruiting standpoint, because you're not convincing 5-star recruits, which Caden Catchings is a 5-star recruit currently. You're not convincing the type of recruits that Matt Painter is getting to come here, play here, and some are redshirting here. He gets quality players to redshirt here. Brad Underwood is pulling a guerrilla warfare technique, pulling every player from anywhere he can to try to assemble a team, and they can't run a functioning offense. And you got, Coleman Hawkins calling it out after the game. They haven't made a Sweet 16 since 2005. Illinois fans would just take a Sweet 16 appearance, never mind making it to a Final Four. That's their goal right now. Purdue's goal is to get to a Final Four. They're one of the top teams in the Big Ten that when they don't succeed to get to an Elite Eight or a Final Four, it's a failure. And so far, they've failed every time. I understand it. It hurts. The Virginia game should have went their way. Of course, Furman gets the ball to bounce against Virginia, and Purdue doesn't. That's sports. That's just how it goes sometimes. But eventually, eventually Matt Painter is going to break through. And I know there's so many fans that don't want to hear that, but I truly believe that in my heart. Now, if I was an Illinois fan like my buddy Chubbs is, who won't stop giving me shit in the DMs, I would want Brad Underwood fired. I don't think he does as good a job building a team. He's good at getting recruits in, but then he can't make the system around it. Matt Painter gets recruits that fit his system. They play well as a team. He coaches it well. And then they inevitably blow it in March. I understand where he falls short as a coach. But for all of you that think that you can find someone better, good luck to you. But I promise you the athletic director at Purdue doesn't think the way you're thinking.
No, for sure. And he's not going to get fired. So, let's
yeah,
talk.
I mean, and I understand that we got to move off of it, but it's the elephant in the room, and it's one of the hottest button topics that Purdue fans are having right now. So as much as we are going to push off of that, we have to address it because there's so many fans in here that are going to say that. So I'm not, while we may be more cynical or understanding of what's better for this team, there's a lot of fans that need to hear it, and maybe they don't agree or whatever. And that's fine. I respect your opinion if you don't agree with that. So Sydney says, Joe made me a sports fan, so I'm going to blame my pain on him.
She cares about one sports team, and it is Purdue basketball. And, it's my bad.
Yeah. I told Jenny, she was sitting with me for the first half when they went on the run. I was like, stay here. You're good luck. They went on an 8-0 run while you were down here doing laundry. Then in the second half, they started to do bad. I was like, get out of here. She don't want to see me like this anyway. And then to the point of, it was very much like St. Peter's. There was a point in the St. Peter's game where they had a chance to
put it away,
chokehold and put them away. And they were up, I believe, 4 or 6. 6. It was the exact 41. Same situation. Purdue was up 6, and they let Fairleigh Dickinson go on the same run to punch back. And at that point, the writing was on the wall in a big way. So yeah, it's a choke. There's no other way around it. I hope guys like Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, and Trey Kaufman-Wren can learn from this and rise above it and use it as fuel to overcome this in their career. Because all 3 of them, I believe, will be 4-year players here at Purdue, and they're going to be damn good ones. And their stats are going to be in the record books at the top of Purdue's program. So they have an opportunity, because this was their freshman year, to overcome this at some point. They got good recruits coming in. They got red shirts coming in. We'll see about how Willie Berg is. There's a lot of unknown with him, curiosity of how he can play as one of the next big man, so to speak. But Camden Hyde, this dude can play. This dude's got athleticism. I don't think a lot of people really know that he's coming, and I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. So it's going to be interesting to see them assimilate to this team. But before we move on to the next topic, and it's going to be another typical hot button topic before we get into Joe's X's and O's, I got to give a shout out to our guys over at Shire Insurance. We'll pull up the banner here. Thank you, Joe. And we'll you're my guy. So as life changes, your insurance needs change. Shire Insurance Services in Crown Point, Indiana, representing auto owners insurance, has been helping clients with their changing insurance needs for over 25 years. As an independent agency, we love working with auto owners to provide excellent service to our clients. Buying your first home? Start with Shire. Expanding your business? Start with Shire. Your teenage driver passed the driving test and you're worried about the increased cost in auto insurance? Start with Shire. The first baby is on the way and you want to reassess your life insurance? Start with Shire. Whatever your insurance concern or need, we are ready to help make those things easier for you. Call 663-7274 or search online to Start with Shire or visit www.shireinsurance.com.
You've dreamed about the perfect house, a place to call your own, and a place to not only stretch out, but to grow. Auto Owners protects your house because to you, it's home. That's simple human sense.
Ask Shire Insurance Services, serving Indiana, Illinois, and Michigan, if auto owners make sense for you.
Happy to help, man. I was just over there talking to myself anyway.
And I also want to give a shout out to our guys over at Mad Mushroom Pizza. Appreciate our sponsors here this season. It's been a lot of fun getting people on board here at Boilers in the Stands. And if you want to order some pizza to drown yourself in some food sorrows tonight, make sure you go to Mad Mushroom Pizza, the best pizza in the game, the best cheese sticks in the game. And when you go there, use our coupon code BITS for 15% off any order you make. That's Mad Mushroom Pizza. Use the coupon code BITS for 15% off any order you make. So there's our sponsors. Thanks again to those guys.
I had some today. It was phenomenal.
There you go. Before we get into the chalkboard, Joe, the other hot button topic that I think some fans are going to want to talk about, are curious about, and we don't have to spend too much time on it because we've already answered this question in previous episodes, but I do find it interesting just knowing the type of guy that Zach Edey is and this question of whether or not he's going to come back, and there's differentiating opinion and people have heard things and this and that and the other. Well, nobody has talked to Zach since he just lost to a 16 seed on the national stage. And I do think that's an interesting wrinkle in this decision because I know the competitor that Zach Edey is. I'm not going to use this as pressure for him to come back, but I'm just trying to get inside the mind of a Zach Edey over the next month as he makes this decision to either try to go pro or go overseas and make a lot of money playing basketball as a dominant force. You saw some, you saw some highlights from the practice yesterday or the day before where Zach Edey's burying threes pretty consistently, and I think that surprised some fans. I have it on good authority from Sasha Stefanovic, a friend of mine, who he's told me at practice, when practice was over, they would shoot threes. And this was before that video came out, that Zach's actually pretty good at shooting them. And I know Matt Painter would never let him shoot those in a game, but it was interesting to watch in a video how well he actually can hit that shot. Regardless of that little tangent, Joe, I'll start with you and then I'll go to Aidan. Yeah. Do you think that this game changes in any way Zach's decision on this? Is there a chance that this might move the needle back to coming back to West Lafayette and finishing on a better note, or is he going to move on?
I mean, I still think he's gone. I'm quickly trying to do some quick calculations. 9:56. Okay, to start this off, we're not going to know till the end of May. That's when if I did. that seems right. End of April or something like that. 60 days before the NBA draft is when players have to decide, hey, I'm going to the draft or not. We will, unless there's like very, very clear one way or the other, we were probably going to find out 60 days before the NBA draft or right about there. So that's what's going to start. I just don't see him coming back and I don't blame him, right? Like at some point you have a career, at some point you have family you got to take care of, you have a job, you got and I just don't see how his stock gets any higher than what it is, even if he does shoot. Like I don't think, like realistically, he comes back and he shoots, let's say he goes 2 attempts a game. I think that would be high. Let's say he puts up 2 attempts and he knocks.
You're talking about from 3.
Yeah. And he's not going to, I don't think he'd do that. Even Travion, like last year, Travion was trying to show just a little bit. And I think Painter led him just to, Travion knocked down a few and you knew that he needed to kind of show that for the next level, especially in Travion's spot where he was. What does that do if he knocks down 33%? I think if he comes back, his stock goes down unless like something crazy happens and it is Edey and he's shown he improves. But, it
doesn't really change the way a defense is going to guard him because they're going to give him that shot every single time, right?
Exactly. And then he's going to go through the process. He's going to get all the feedback. More and more mocks are saying, hey, this dude is a legit second rounder. There's, teams make promises to players. So there's that. And 95% of the time, the team, that's probably high based on how business works. But a lot of times these teams do keep their promises, right? Even in the workouts, if a team, say he works out for whatever team first and they love Edey, they'll be like, hey, just kind of chill on workouts. We're going to take you with pick 51, assuming you're there. And so if he has something like that, I just don't see why he would come back. I really don't.
Yeah. And Sam King actually asked him about it in the post game, put out a tweet. He said he's undecided, said if no money was involved, it's an easy decision. He has pros and cons to make before weighing a decision. So kind of what we touched on there. I think, maybe, certainly if he gets a promise, maybe, I don't know, in the top 40, that would kind of be a lock of like, I'm out. But, it's an emotional thing. And I think you're maybe onto something, Braggs, of like, hey, unfinished business. No one wants to go out like this. So that emotions could trump it. And who knows? Could Purdue put together some form of NIL? I don't know, especially with him being international. We don't really know what that looks like. So, I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's totally different from Jaden Ivey. Jaden Ivey was a lottery pick. He was thinking about the NBA, and rightfully so. I'm not criticizing this, but he was, a lot of every decision he made all of last season was in the back of his head. He's thinking about his lottery stock and his NBA dreams that were just months away. And it's totally understandable. He's doing everything he can to be a top 5 pick. There's big money in that, and raise who he is individually. Zach, it's totally different. He doesn't have any guarantee to get drafted, let alone in the first round or the top 40. And there's also with Zach, okay, if he was going number 1, he'd be gone, or a lottery pick, just like Jaden, he'd have to leave. He'd have no choice
for himself.
But because he isn't, because the game has changed so much in the NBA that he isn't that type of player that's a top pick, he is such a team guy. He is so close with Ethan Morton. I know he cares. I'm not saying Jaden Ivey didn't care that they blew it last year. He did. But I just, in some sense, I think it matters a little more to Zach, his legacy at Purdue. He is reaching an echelon that very few players make. Jaden's probably one of the most talented players to ever come through to Purdue. But Zach Edey, if he played one more year, has the opportunity to be one of the best players to ever play at Purdue, period. Right there with Glenn Robinson. Glenn is obviously probably never losing that throne. He's one of the best college basketball players of all time if you had the pleasure of watching him play. So it'll be really interesting to see this decision go down. but the NIL stuff, unfortunately, because he's a foreign player, changes some of those circumstances. If that speed bump wasn't in the way to keeping him, I think that they would do everything they can to keep him, and he probably would stay. But I think that's the one thing that's going to maybe move the needle back the other way. But we'll have to wait and see. Before we get to the chalkboard, the other thing I want to address is Corey Lesney, who's been tuned into most of our shows all year long, if not all of them. And I really appreciate everyone, either that's new to tuning in now, but certainly the ones that have been with us all year as we grow this thing. And he puts in the chat, you're going to see a massive exit of players here, guys. Sorry to spill the beans. And I really have to push back on you there, Corey. I understand we're all upset here and I get where you're coming from, but at the same time, I don't see that happening. The only player, just like last year going into the offseason, that I could see a potential of transferring is Brandon Newman. Brandon and Matt Painter finally figured it out here at the end of the year where Brandon found his way to the starting lineup. But 2 years in a row, Brandon has had his playing time pulled back. And maybe there's a chance Brandon Newman will decide, hey, I'm just going to go somewhere else to finish out my college basketball career where I know I'm going to start no matter what, where there isn't this, will I or won't I through the summer, because at the end of the day, Matt's going to play who's practicing better throughout the summer. And for whatever reason, Brandon Newman wasn't the guy he chose for that 2 years in a row, where a lot of fans felt like he should, including our guy, Bitcoin is Freedom. But I could see Brandon Newman transferring to Penn State. That's one. You see the relationship him and Micah Shrewsbury have when they meet in the handshake line after games. They're very close. And obviously Penn State's going to be losing Jalen Pickett and their other guard, senior guard. Help me out
Lundy.
here, guys. Yeah, Lundy.
They're losing everybody, to be honest.
They're losing everybody. So there's an opportunity there
coach
for Brandon Newman to go over to Micah Shrewsbury, unless, like you mentioned, Micah Shrewsbury goes to Notre Dame or something like that.
I saw a tweet that Penn State's willing to, I don't know the exact numbers, but basically just drop the bag for Shoes. So I don't know if that weighs in, but
that might just mean that it's just a higher buyout for somebody else,
Yeah.
I mean, there's no loyalty in this.
Really. Well, and then the other aspect with Newman, and I hope he stays. I give him a lot of credit for digging his feet in the dirt this year and staying. He could have easily taken the grass is greener approach and go somewhere else. He stuck it here. He found a role, and he eventually found his way into the starting lineup. Obviously, I'm sure he wanted to play better today, too. The whole team did. So he's ending on a sour note, just like everybody else is. But I could see that happening for the reason of like an opening spot at Penn State in the roster where he can start and know that going into the year, and B, the players that are coming in. You still have Fletcher Lawyer. You got Camden Hyde coming in. I'm not exactly sure what position he's going to play, but I'm sure it's somewhere in Brandon's scopes. And then you've got Miles Colvin coming in, who's very talented, but I'm sure is going to be very green. We all have a lot of excitement and anticipation for him coming into the program, but I think people need to, proceed with caution with expectations for what he's going to do as a freshman. Although we've seen some freshmen play pretty well here over the last few years. So I'm sure Painter will have him ready to play. So we'll see what happens, but let's get over to the chalkboard, because there's certainly some things I think we need to address as far as what went wrong. And this is one of our favorite segments here on this show, where Joe kind of explains the whys through the X's and O's with Joe. So go ahead, Joe.
Yeah. I don't have a ton, and the way I think what Aidan said kind of early was accurate. It's just, this wasn't Purdue today, the Purdue offense. I'm just going to kind of go over why, pretty much is what, Fairleigh Dickinson did. So, you have a lot of time. It was these side post-ups that I think just got them in trouble. Trying to see this. I don't know if that's good or not. If it's bad, just let me know. So that you have your guy, and say Lawyer was throwing it in, and then here and here. If Edey, as this ball comes in, Edey has the ball. First of all, even before that, let's say Lawyer has the ball. Fairleigh Dickinson had defender here, defender here, defender here, defender here, and defender here. It more or less was that. Like, and maybe this is slightly exaggerated. Maybe he's like here. Like, this is that. And so this is the big thing with the threes. It's just like if you make Brain knocks down a couple threes, Newman knocks down a 3 or 2, Gillis goes 3 of 7 or 2 of 7, just instead of 1 and 7 as my cap falls off. It's just it makes him have to extend a little bit, or you would just keep paying him, right? And that obviously didn't happen today. And so then when the ball did get in, right, it's ball gets in, and I will say Edey has it. Like, he maybe Lawyer cuts through, right, and so now Lawyer's over here, or if he's over here, his defender then's probably here, or something like this. Like they just and it's just tough, right? So now you have defender walled up here, you have defender walled up here. You're taking away lanes. He's probably you're probably rotating or whatever. It doesn't matter because the shots that it did generate couldn't knock him down. It was as simple as that to me. And what I was surprised that they didn't go to more. And when I eventually at some point watch this back within the next month or whatever, I don't know exactly when it'll be. They just didn't. They got away from this Edey in the middle, right? And one of their set plays that they love to go to is this, this horns high low that they go to, and it's just this, and then shooter. It's just a simple. This is horns, so you have 2 like in here, and then 2 guys at the corner. Smith has the ball, comes off, he dives, and then it's a pass. And I know that was messy, but you guys get the gist. And so what this does is now you're getting Edey kind of here. And Smith is here, Gillis is here with the ball, and so now his defender, because he has to set the screen right. His defender is probably were they in drop, Aiden? I don't even remember, to be honest.
I don't remember.
They're either in drop or hedge, whatever. His guy is sometimes he had him here, and that's where you saw Edey catch it, turn and dunk. Defender here, defender here, defender here. Now I think in the second half, I think one thing that they did change, and that's probably a reason they went away from it for some is. Defender first half is here. Edey gets it. This defender here probably second half was closer to here. This one was here. You have guy pressuring ball, and then you probably have this. And then so at time, eventually, if you don't get this initial seal, defender probably fronts again. And that was an issue Purdue had all year, is when teams fronted and showed backside help. You just have to you have to be able to make plays on the weak side when it happens. And Purdue just could not. But even so, like I was surprised that they didn't get to it. Because then if he does get it here and he has it here, it's Zach Edey, and against a 6'4" dude, or 2 of them, or 3 of them. It doesn't matter. And he oftentimes, and he's shown it in the past couple games before today, he showed he would step through or whatever, get to a hook. And I think his rhythm was off a little bit too, right? He missed a couple hooks that I think he normally gets and stuff. But that was, I guess I'll just go there. Like after you just dared anybody else on Purdue to beat him, and it didn't happen. They said, we're going to legitimately throw 3 guys on the best player in college basketball. And yeah, that's just what it was. And then, on the other end, I thought Edey wasn't terrible, wasn't great. At times they definitely kind of just dragged him out some. At times he played pretty good defense on guards and just contested shots at the rim too. So I think that's what I got there for, I guess, the last X's and O's for at least this season.
The last one.
We'll throw in some in the offseason. I know we're still gonna have tons of content coming out. Maybe you guys can let me know if you'd like this. If I turn, maybe it'd be better production than just an actual clipboard. If I could turn it stuff like that into YouTube videos, 8 minutes, whatever. Is that something you'd be interested in, especially in the off season and as we get into next year? If you do, just let me know. But yeah, I think that's where I wanted to go there. I don't know, Aiden, was I right? Was I wrong?
Well, yeah, I mean, you were good. And I think the side post-ups thing that was an issue for a while now that we'd seen. I mean, them just, I think in that Illinois game, maybe it was that it sticks out where they just get away from the ball screen. And then the funny part was when they got a timeout to draw up something down 3 with 30 seconds left, they go to a flat ball screen at half court. And that honestly surprised me a little bit. But I get the rationale of, like, because who do you have that can just make a play? So just free Smith up, get him some room getting downhill. But yeah, just indecisive. not prepared, and just unfortunately the moment seemed a little too big for some of the younger guys, and it doesn't mean that has to define their careers at Purdue by any means. The only time in history this happened, that team went on to win a national title the next year. But, your heart hurts for a guy like David Jenkins who, this is how he has to go out. And
11 points short of 2002.
Yeah. And he's going to, you think about that 3 in the first half, but really when it was 46-41 and we had extended that lead, it felt like, boy, let the floodgates open.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go.
I was like, this was going to be the Purdue 25-point win.
Yeah, I felt like we were going to maybe get a backdoor cover at that point. And then they rip off an 8-0 run.
Yep.
And you just
couple tough shots in there, but it was poor offense
shots,
too.
Tough shots, and then we couldn't score. The guy said it. The guy on the broadcast, I don't even know who that guy was. The color guy who sounded like he's
an SEC guy, I think.
Okay, it sounded like he was just pulled off a subway in New York, and they just needed a guy. But he was calling him out, and he was right, because in the first half we couldn't stop them, and in the second half we couldn't score. It was an unbelievable, just total not what we've seen from this team all year. And like you said, once they hit those shots in the 8-0 run, it was going to be a dogfight, and it just, there is no good explanation that any of us can give, or even Matt Painter can give, for why they came out as flat as they were tonight. They looked flat from the jump. They didn't look ready to go, and for that reason, they're going to be watching the rest of the tournament. And I
want to give a shout out to our guys at Indiana Sports Coverage at ISC_Purdue. Some of these images you're seeing here from the final game for Purdue's season, as you see Zach Edey bracketed there, are from our guys over at ISC Purdue. Like I said, Indiana Sports Coverage. They do such great work. Feel bad for them because I know how much they love covering this team and following them around. And the journey ends here. And they got to get back on the saddle. Purdue does next year, and hopefully guys like Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer can find a way to overcome this in their career. They're off to such a great start for 2 freshmen that are gonna break a lot of records as some really talented players on this team. But this whole team in general, maybe just short of Zach, depending on whether or not he comes back or not, is going to have to try to slay this dragon next year. They're going to be just as talented next year. Will they win the Big Ten again? Who knows? Let's see how this all shakes out. They'll certainly be, probably less overlooked than they were going into this year, where they were predicted to be 7th in the Big Ten. And even fans like me, I can remember when I jumped in your spaces before the season, I think we were all hesitant. Joe was the only one that wasn't as hesitant to put them at the top of the Big Ten. We were all kind of like,
No, it was Aiden first.
Oh, I'm sorry, Aiden. Yes. It's been so long now. It feels like a lifetime ago. But
I appreciate it, though.
Yeah. Well, one of you two geniuses had Purdue at the top, and I wasn't ready to say that. It just looked like Illinois and Indiana's year. And Purdue ended up winning the Big Ten by 3 games, which was pretty impressive. It was a pretty brutal year for the Big Ten across the board, a lot of inconsistencies, and Purdue was the one team that was consistent for most of the year until the end. And then at the end, all of a sudden, they started finding adversity, and they lose like 4 of 6, but then they win 5 in a row. They seal the deal for a Big Ten regular season championship. They go into the Big Ten tournament and win it, but their road was a little easier than I think anticipated, albeit calling a Penn State win easy, where Penn State won by 30 last night. Purdue beat that Penn State team 3 times this year, 3 different ways too. And for whatever reason, they could beat Penn State 3 times, but they couldn't beat Fairleigh Dickinson tonight. And that kind of is the embodiment of matchups. As you can talk about all the different, Painter needs to do this better, or the refs need to do that better, or my goofy ass saying the fans need to cheer. All that, none of that matters at the end of the day when the ball is rolled out on the court. It's about the matchups. And whether Purdue fans want to admit this or not, because it's a 16 seed that we didn't have much respect for going into the game, they were a matchup problem for Purdue. And, that does fall on Matt Painter, as Aidan said pretty profoundly earlier, that it's unacceptable. Matt Painter needed to adjust in the moment to overcome a tough matchup, a unique, I don't even want to say a tough matchup, a unique matchup for Purdue, and he just couldn't do it. And that compiled with the players being so hesitant, so nervous, so gun shy, and the problems just continue to compile on each other. And that led to, I had some pushback on Twitter calling it the worst loss in program history and the worst loss in college basketball history. I don't really understand how that's debatable. It's not to me. I love Game Day Gabby, but she said Virginia was worse. No, that wasn't. Not even close. That team can hold their head high knowing they lost to the national championship, the eventual national champions, and Virginia was lucky to win that game. Fairleigh Dickinson was not lucky to beat Purdue today. Purdue was lucky that they were even in the game with 5 minutes to go. And that's against a 16 seed that didn't even win their conference championship, that lost 15 games on the year, that has the smallest team in Division I. It is, I'm sorry, guys. I know it's tough to admit, but this is the worst loss. It was the largest upset as far as Vegas spread is concerned, which I could care less about. But at the same time, it was, just by definition of, underdog, it was the largest point spread of a team to beat a number 1 seed. This is this is the worst loss in college basketball history, period.
No
Purdue
question.
has to wear it. And not only do they have to wear it, but more importantly, they have to overcome it. And the only way they're ever going to overcome the fact that this is on their resume now, and the fact that, IU fans are always going to talk about the banners, they got to put a banner up of their own. And until that day comes, just like Cub fans who never got to have any kind of bragging rights, no matter how successful their season was, until they won a World Series, they couldn't have any kind of bragging rights. So Big Ten championships are fun. Big Ten tournaments are fun. You got to hang a Final Four banner, got to hang a national championship banner. And that's how the bragging rights truly turns the tide.
Yeah. And I think this was an interesting comment. This was from earlier. Said Purdue's name will always be known as the Big Chokers after this. And yes, until Purdue wins. And there's probably going to be like, well, Purdue's never going to win, whatever. I believe they will. When you think Virginia right now, like the only difference is they won the game against Purdue and won the championship.
Exactly.
Purdue didn't.
You can lose these type of games if you win a national championship.
Yeah. If Purdue wins the national championship,
but you cannot if you have never won one. I mean, I know they won one in 1940, whatever.
Yeah, like if Purdue comes back, say they bring back most of this team or whatever, and win next year, it's going to be like the Virginia thing you're like, oh yeah, that happens. It's not like that's not Virginia's defining feature, although they're racking up losses just like Purdue too.
Yeah, and
but Purdue does in the championship. Yeah.
And I had one graphic I saw on Twitter from JG Graphics or something.
JG Trends.
Really JG Trends, thanks. Where I loaded in. So this is I think a really good just final thing about the game. You see kind of Purdue's shot distribution, their shot selection. You see in non-conference, they had 40% of their shots are at the rim, 41% from 3, 20 from mid-range. Obviously, that's an awesome balance. Pretty much the same in Big Ten play, a little more at the rim, actually. And obviously, you see the efficiency numbers attached to it. And then, of course, in the March Madness game, FDU forcing Purdue into 49% of their shots being threes and only 0.58 points per possession and only 32% at the rim, which is insane because they tallest guy. This is the shortest team in the country. They're the shortest team in the country. And Purdue only took 32% of their shots at the rim. So I just think the way I'm going to remember this game is where Purdue players got a ton of open looks, and instead of driving and just going at the basket, they settled for threes that they just weren't hitting. And I think that kind of sums up the game. And I don't know how much more I actually have about the actual game because that right there, I think that graphic really sums it up.
100%.
Yeah.
Just bad, man. I mean, I want everyone to feel like they have a voice on this show. whether you're here on it or in the chat. Wanted everyone to have an opportunity to vent. I don't know how much more needs to be said, unfortunately. I mean, this is it, and there's really not much more to be said. I had my piece earlier, to start the show. I do feel bad for every Purdue fan out there. I feel for you guys. I'm newer to this program. Anybody that watches this show knows that I've been rooting for this team now for about 6-7 years. So for those of you that have been rooting for this team your whole life, I feel for you. I know this feeling as a Cub fan. I'm earning my stripes certainly as a Purdue fan, because in my tenure at Purdue as a fan of this team and this program, I've seen a lot of success. I'm a season ticket holder for 5 years now. I've seen a lot of success, but I've seen some heartbreak, whether it be the loss to Virginia to get to the Final Four, and now these last 3 years losing to double-digit seeds in various rounds, 2 first rounds and 1 Sweet 16. Mark Hofferth, we appreciate you. We're just here for you guys. We weren't going to hide from this moment. We want to, give you guys an outlet to vent. We're trying to vent and make sense of it all. But like I said, I feel for every one of you. I've been through this as a Cub fan. I watched, in 2003 when the Steve Bartman moment happened. I went to the game after that, and the Cubs eventually lost in the NLCS to the Marlins, who went on to win the World Series. And I watched a 93-year-old lady bawling in the stands as the Marlins were celebrating on the field. That wasn't easy to see, and she probably never saw her Chicago Cubs win a World Series in her entire life. And I know there's some Purdue fans out there that feel this. I know I can understand and empathize how you feel right now, and this sense of urgency, like, when are they going to get it done? There's a lot of basketball programs out there that have no chance of winning a national championship. So, keep that in mind. I know if you look on the other side of it, look at Purdue football. They're a solid team. They're, a team you can get behind and root for, and they're the tryhards, and they upset teams like Ohio State every once in a while. But does anybody go into a season saying national championship or bust for Purdue football? No, you don't. You're not beating Ohio State. You're not beating, you beaten them once, but you're not beating Georgia and Alabama and Clemson in a college football playoff. I mean, I think that's just, your perspective as a Purdue football fan. Well, Purdue basketball has a chance. They at least have a chance to win you one. Now, are they going to do it? I can't promise you that, but I think that I think they will eventually slay the dragon, but that's just my belief. Blake Widmer says, all our players had such good comments post-game. I love this team. Can't believe we got beat like this again. We are better than this. Completely agree with you, Blake Widmer. And and I'm sorry if I insulted you Purdue football fans, but it's just the truth. I mean, if you win a national championship, I'll eat this hat on my head. I mean, more power to you, but it just doesn't feel likely. Now, Purdue winning a national,
clip that.
I think there's a better chance your basketball team will win one, but we'll see. It is what it is. Like I said, I'm kind of at a loss because I'm definitely in shock. So this is kind of where I'm going to leave it. So any final words from either one of you? I know you kind of already had your final words, but I want to give you one more chance. We're going to do a season wrap-up show once the dust settles. Joe and Aidan probably are going to do more tournament breakdown shows if they're not completely depressed about this outcome, and they'll probably continue to cover more of this tournament as it rolls along. I'm going to take a much-needed break from a lot of this, and maybe in 2 weeks or so, we'll come back and do a season wrap-up show for Purdue and kind of let the dust settle and let the wound heal a little bit and talk about, some of the stuff we've talked about tonight, but maybe with less emotion attached to it. So, any final thoughts from either of you guys?
Yeah, I'm just, and this is, this obviously isn't like the end or anything. We're going to have a show in a couple weeks. We're going to have shows throughout the off season. I got some plans really for the off season, and we'll, us as a group, I know we have to kind of figure out what we want to do specifically. But just, I appreciate Braggs, you taking a shot on me and Aidan. Jumping in we were just doing Twitter spaces, post games and stuff. And I was, we were both doing our Twitter things. We started the podcast. You took a shot on us. And we built something really, really cool that, we have hundreds of people tune into. I got to interview Zach Edey and his mom and, David Jenkins and stuff like that. So, I just appreciate that. I appreciate everybody tuning in. I really do. It's cool, whether it be here, Twitter, breakdowns, or our Feed the Post podcast. Our Feed the Post podcast, we don't really promote it besides just on here or whatever. Like, it's almost at 5,000 views across all the podcasts, which is just really cool. So yeah, like this sucks that it went this way. In terms of the show, though, I've really, really enjoyed what we've done, and I think we've really built something here.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Joe. And it's been my pleasure. You two are as good as it gets, in my opinion, in Purdue basketball coverage. You understand this game at a level that very few do. As far as a fan perspective, I know there's plenty of people that understand the X's and O's of basketball, but as far as I'm concerned, for the people in Purdue social media or even, Purdue legitimate media, you guys know the game a lot better than most. So I give you a lot of credit. And, honestly, we're lucky to have you here. And I know Kraig would say the same thing if he was here. I know he's working hard covering the press conferences right now. So, you guys have been such a vital addition to what we're doing here. And next season is going to be a lot of fun. This season has been great. We've taken off like a rocket ship.
Yeah.
And there's a great balance of you guys that really understand the game and Kraig that has this historical perspective, and that was sorely needed tonight. And then you got me, the meatball, who's going to yell about the fans in the stands. But that's what I do here. I'm going to bring you the fire and the passion, try to give you my perspective on the game as much as I can, but I'm always going to stay in my lane as the fan in the stands. I'm no different than anyone else that sits at Mackey Arena or goes to these games at the tournaments or whatever else. I take a lot of pride in being that blue collar fan, just like every single one of you guys in the chat. So we'll tie our bootstraps up, get our hard hat and lunch pail, and go to work next year for every single one of you. Coverage is not over. We'll have a wrap-up season show.
We're also
go ahead.
Sorry.
Joe.
Totally meant to throw this in. Not going to do it tonight, but I would assume most nights in the NCAA, like of the tourney, like the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sundays, me and Aidan will hop on here, do a live show, just kind of recap the days. Totally meant to throw that in. Sorry to cut you off. But
no, you're good. And you can find them. Feed the Post with Joe Jackson and Aidan Kunst, Purdue basketball podcast. Hey, I've cut you off so many times this year. You owed me a few. And you can find them on Twitter at @feedthepost_, and find them on Google and Spotify and Apple for listening. And they're doing a lot of their live streaming on this channel on our Braggs in the Stands channel as well. So just keep on the lookout for updates on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and these guys are going to keep giving you great college basketball coverage, and we're going to keep giving you Purdue basketball coverage. We got, like I said, a season wrap-up show that'll eventually come. We may even bring out a couple upcoming players that are coming to the program, whether they're redshirt or recruits. We've talked to a few of those. Don't want to put anybody on the spot by naming names, but we've got some people that may come on and look towards the future. And who knows, maybe my good old buddy, the Cub fan, Matt Painter, maybe we can get him to come on in July during the heat of the summer when the bullets aren't flying for Purdue basketball, and bring him on and grill him about why he doesn't do his zone. Then he probably will throw a brick at me or something, but we can mess with him a little bit, but I know he's going to get back on the horse. He'll be right back on the recruiting trail tomorrow and everything else. Barb Graham, my mom, says, great season, Joe and Aidan. You are awesome addition. Glad I got to meet you too, Sydney. So there's a shout out from the general, my mom, so appreciate everybody once again for tuning in. We appreciated Steve Fisher, and this is it. Me with these Midwestern goodbyes. Don't really know what else to say. Sorry to every one of you that are having a tough night going through this, but get back up on the horse next year, ladies and gentlemen. This is what sports is all about, and sometimes it's not easy. So that wraps things up here tonight for Boilers in the Stands. I'm Greg Braggs. This is Aidan Kunst and Joe Jackson. Keep on the lookout for Feed the Post shows coming up. And always, always boiler up.